Well, we also have two very big items tonight on the issue of Syrian refugees. First, the French Prime Minister today blasted the European Union over its border control system, saying he thinks the Paris attackers used the refugee crisis to slip into Europe, despite the fact that the ringleader was a known jihadist and the subject of an international arrest warrant. Then, late today, more than 36 House Democrats delivered a stunning blow to President Obama, voting with Republicans to slow the flow of Syrians into the United States. The final count was 289 to 137, a big enough margin for the House to override a presidential veto, despite heavy pushback from President Obama and from Hillary Clinton.
We cannot allow terrorists to intimidate us into abandoning our values and our humanitarian obligations. That is just not who we are. We are better than that.
The idea that somehow they pose a more significant threat than all the tourists who pour into the United States every single day it just doesn't jive with reality.
Joining me now, presidential candidate and Republican Senator from Florida, Marco Rubio. Senator, good to see you tonight. So your thoughts on that, the accusation that, as you feel, that we should pause the influx of these Syrian refugees is un-American.
The president and Hillary Clinton are completely out of touch with reality. They've taken this incredibly extreme position. That what needs to happen here is that you can't let people in unless they can pass a background check. What's so outrageous about that? This country, the number one obligation of the federal government is to keep us safe. This is not about slamming the door on anybody. This is about the reality that we should not allow anyone into the country unless we know who they are and they can pass a background check. And in the case of people coming from the Middle East, it is very difficult to conduct an accurate background check, because this is one of those issues where you allow 10,000 people in, you get 999 of them right, but you miss on one of them, you've allowed an ISIS fighter into the country. And so that's what the issue is, and that's why it doesn't surprise me that 36 Democrats broke from the party, because the president has taken an extreme position on this.
So the House has enough to override a presidential veto. What's going to happen in the Senate?
Well, as you know, in the Senate, we have some peculiar rules, including the need for 60 votes. But I think we can get the Democrats, at least 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Democrats to come on board.
Really?
It's clear where the American people are. And that's what we're going to need. And then, of course, we need a veto-proof majority. This makes no sense to me, why the president is going down this road. All you need to say is, it's not that we don't want to allow people in, is that we may not be able to, because we can't conduct background checks on all of them.
Right, but
there's
what
no
the president
government
says,
you can
you
call.
tell me, because what the president says is he came out and mocked the GOP this week, saying you're afraid of widows and orphans, but you think you can take on Putin.
But look, I mean, one thing is a widow and orphan, but the vast majority of people that are applying for entry are not just widows and orphans. It's all sorts of people, many of whom, as I said, are in fact, not most of them, are seeking refuge from oppression, whatever it may be. But the problem is that if you just get one of them or two of them or three of them wrong, you've got a big problem. And we know that ISIS is deliberately using the refugee crisis to insert fighters into Europe. Why wouldn't they do the same in the United States? And his own agencies, the federal agencies, are telling us there is no way we can conduct the kind of background checks on people from the Middle East that we conduct in other parts of the world, because there's just no verification system. There's no database. There's no country. There's no government we can just call up. The document forgeries, which are rampant in that part of the world now, as evidenced by yesterday what happened in Honduras.
Yeah, in Honduras.
And what happened in Honduras.
But here, what do you make of the plan of some of the Republicans? Like Senator Cruz has suggested this is an option of letting in the Christians, but not the Muslims, which President Obama and Hillary Clinton both say, now that is just playing into the terrorist narrative of, we discriminate against Muslims here in the United States.
Well, first of all, that's already part of the law. The law says you have to have a basis for which you're being persecuted on, and one of those tests is a religious test. And clearly Christians are not just persecuted, they're slaughtered in the Middle East. And so that is a grounds already. We already have a religious test in the existing law, and that is applied. But even there, you have to be able to pass some level of background check. Now, perhaps it might be easier on someone that's a well-known member of a Christian community, a well-established community. It might be easier. It's not that we're discriminating against anybody. It's that you cannot allow people in this environment unless you know exactly who they are and why they are coming. And my point is, it is exceedingly difficult to do that with people coming from that part of the world right now.
There's been a lot of talk about what we should be doing here in the United States with respect to mosques now. And one of your fellow candidates, Donald Trump, is suggesting we may need to close mosques that have problems with radicals at the top. What do you say?
Well, I think we need to target radicalism. A lot of it is actually happening online, not simply in mosques. The vast majority
But the
of mosques in
mosque piece of it is the
America are not.
controversial piece. So where do you stand on that?
Well, I think it's not about closing down mosques. It's about closing down any place, whether it's a cafe, a diner, an internet site, any place where radicals are being inspired. And that we need to have. But the bigger problem we have is our inability to find out what these places are, because we've crippled our intelligence programs, both through unauthorized disclosures by a traitor in Edward Snowden, or by some of the things this president has put in place with the support even of some from my own party to diminish our intelligence capabilities. So whatever facility is being used, it's not just a mosque, any facility that's being used to radicalize and inspire attacks against the United States should be a place that we look at.
Senator Marco Rubio, great to see you.
Thank you.